Hi, I'm Thomas. A surprising amount of people have requested a tutorial on how I do my renders. The most popular question so far has been, how do you do your materials? And that's a good question. How do I do my materials? So, start off with, the purpose of these tutorials are less, here's how you do this, or here's how you're supposed to do this, and more, here's how I do this, and if there's something interesting in there you can grab and learn from, that's awesome. That's why I'm doing it, just to share, not really to teach. So yeah, that's the plan. I'm kind of going to split these up into 3 videos right now. So first up, we're going to have textures and materials. Second, we're going to have lighting and environment, and then third, we're going to have general composition and modeling. Not really modeling, but more what shapes and what sizes and colors, and I don't know, that's kind of an abstract video right now. Not quite sure how I want to do that. The whole format for this is really casual. We'll just see what happens. I may totally throw that out of the window and try something different. So yeah, let's hop right into it. That was really cheesy, oh my gosh. Okay, so how I do my textures in Blender is I basically take one image texture and create a material from that, generating a bunch of different components of that material that get affected by that texture. So an example of, sort of real life example of this is concrete. You might think concrete is kind of a boring material, but here's a picture of some concrete, and down at the bottom it's kind of boring and flat, but the closer you get to the top you start to see these really interesting reflections, and the material changes basically. So there's change in how much it reflects, and change in how smooth it is, and changes in its height, so it's like bumpy, and that's kind of what we have to imitate in Blender. So to start off, I have this big flat plane with an HDRI map behind it, just so we can get some interesting lighting. So we'll go over to the compositing tab, and this is the texture I'm going to be using. I downloaded it from textures.com. I'll put a link in the video description because it's a great site for textures. So I'll make a new material and I will drop an image texture in. So now we just have color. So this is if the material was totally flat, just absorbed all the light, and you can see it's really boring. This is not a great material. We're going to start by adding some more stuff to this. So generally with my materials, I just automatically add a glossy that's affected by a Frenzel. So this is basically the closer you get to the edge of the material, it adds a little bit of reflection. You can kind of see it. So going back to this concrete texture, you can see that the further up we get, basically the more shallow of an angle the light is hitting it at, the more reflections you have. And it's just a natural property of materials that just makes it more realistic to have. So next we want to add another component, so another mix shader, another glossy. Basically we're just adding reflections at this point. And then a color ramp node. And color ramp nodes are one of the greatest things ever. Basically they allow you to take an image texture and sort of remap it. So you can say, I want these white areas to come out as a very high number, these dark areas to come out as a low number, or flip it round, or make it very high contrast, or oops, I messed that up. Flipped the diffuse and the mix shader. Okay, so now we can actually kind of see it working. So this is without any like color on the material. You can already see this pattern emerging just because we're adding in reflections based off of the color and the texture. So I'll add the color back. So basically then we take this, let me lower the roughness so it's a bit more obvious what's happening. And so we take this and we kind of just add more contrast. So now you can see, oh, that's really cool. This mix shader is pushed more towards 1, the lighter this texture is. Anyway, so yeah, so in these whiter regions of the texture, you get more reflections. The way it's set up right now, you can flip it, and you can make it so in the darker regions you get more. I'll just leave it like this. So this is pretty cool, but we're not done yet. I will add another color ramp node. Same thing, plug the image texture into it, and this time I'll plug it into the roughness value of our glossy shader, so we can affect how smooth essentially the reflections are based off of the image texture. So I'll flip that around, and it's basically you just fiddle with it till it works. There's no real formula for picking what these color ramps actually are, but that's pretty nice. You can see in the lighter it is, the smoother the reflections are. The issue right now is the other areas, it jumps straight from black right to white, and so that means you go from no roughness basically up to full roughness, and it's not, doesn't look great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this part of the color ramp node, and I'm going to lower the brightness down. So now we get less rough reflections just overall. You might do even more. So, and generally, like, no roughness, so like a purely reflective texture or material doesn't look that good, just I've found. So that's pretty nice. And the final touch to this material is the actual model of this flat plane is totally unrealistic. You'd never have that happening in real life. So we're going to simulate, basically, some bumps on it. So what I did was I added another color ramp texture, and I plugged that into the displacement value of our material output. And so now you can see that we're essentially adding bumps to the surface of the material. So generally you don't want it going from 0 to 1. You want to go from 0 to sort of a small amount, like 0.1, just because it's more realistic. Something like dirt, however, would be super bumpy, but metal or concrete is not going to be crazy. So yeah, that's looking quite nice. And that's basically it. That's the idea behind it. I can up the brightness of this just so it's a little easier to see. Another thing that's fun to do when you're testing materials is if you add a cube that is emissive, so it gives off light, you can kind of see how a light would interact with the material in a specific spot. And so that's cool. Anyway, so hope you learned something from that. We'll hopefully have another tutorial at some point.